call 220 electricity. Just a video. I would add more batteries by phase 5. I would add 6,000, another inverter and batteries. Just keep adding batteries and solar power, panels, and eventually a windmill. And at that time, After you start adding panels to the system, you've got a system. You add another inverter to it. Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. I have a handout that I want to give everybody with a lot of this information. I did give, now, what's cool about these is, I think I'll use my little pointer here. So these two inverters are on the same sine wave, and these two inverters are 180 degrees forward. This will give me now complete 220 or 240, whatever you want to call electricity. And I'll get into that means in a few minutes. These are our new panels, and these are the panels that we start now with our old system that we're tying in the system here. So let me go through what we have here. There's the batteries. There's
Speaking of headphones,
six
but
batteries. We
asking how
have
to
30 kilowatts of
speaking up
power
from here.
there. This is my
The audio is
sub
picking up from my
so the
microphone.
power
I want it
goes
from
to
the
the sub panel
mixer.
there, and it goes from there over on the other side of the door over here, and that's where my main cabinet is. And this is my battery, these things here, my batteries off and on. That's where my solar panels on. And that's basically, it looks complicated, and it is in some ways, but if you can isolate all the components and keep them isolated in your mind, then it's not confusing. Now, when you go over there and you look at my system,
If let's say that you're using the system mainly to have something like you're at the very beginning and it's more of a backup system when the power goes off, could you ever use the battery from a hybrid vehicle if you have one as that battery?
you go ask Greg Batista. So if you are really, really mechanically and electrically inclined, I would say yes. Okay? If you are not, don't touch it. It's better to buy plug and play stuff. I'm just, that's, if you're asking for my opinion, that's my opinion, for what it's worth to you. If you're savvy with all that kind of stuff, go for it. Like Greg's savvy. But I wouldn't touch it. I like the, I mean, as it was, this was as complicated as I want to get. And I'm going to be building more into my system. Let me see, what else did I want to tell you?
Quick question for you. How much
Sure.
space is required for all of this paraphernalia?
That's about, whoops, I didn't do that. Well, I lost it all. Hold on here. Just, there we go. Try to push the wrong, oh no, I lost it. Thank you. You can see why I don't want to get into messing with my the batteries. That's good. That's where I want to be. So I'll try to push the right button. So from that wall there to that wall there is about 8 feet. And then what I did was my batteries are set back. This is not a real clear picture, but my batteries are set back inside underneath there. And what I did was, you don't see a lot of my wires because I built that white board there. That comes out quite a few inches, and all my cables and everything from that, so you don't see it. The only thing you see are my communication cables. You can hardly see them, but there's communication cables between the inverters. This first one is my master that controls the battery. So there's a line going down the batteries from there. And then these are all wired together. You can see that group of wires right there. It's very faint. Anyway, the first one tells the other one what to do, from what I understand.
And is all of that indoors or is that
That's in my
outdoors?
shop.
That's in your shop. Is there a risk of fire?
As far as I understand, the lithium iron phosphate batteries do not burn or explode. And that's why I would be very leery of a car battery. Very leery of that. If I were to use car batteries, they would be in another building that if they burn down, I'm not going to lose my shop.
And last question, final cost between a complete system and a bootstrap system. Would you end up over time spending more money
A
on a
little bit.
bootstrap?
A little bit. The biggest problem I see with bootstrapping it is your batteries. Ideally, you want your batteries all to be the same age. So if you notice in the thing that the next thing you buy is, after your panels is a bunch of batteries. Because you want to get the batteries the same age. That's very important, especially if you're doing a lead acid. You want the lead acid batteries all to be the same age. Lithium, it's ideal to have lithium all the same age. If there was a year's different, that wouldn't be the end of the road. Lithium ion, depending on how well you take care of them, they can go 10 to 20 years. It just depends on how you use them. Same thing, lead acid. If you let the water go down, and so for those of you that say I don't want to spend that much on lithium, I'll go to Sam's Club and I'll buy the lead acid batteries. They're a lot cheaper. You got to keep those up. You got to put water. You got to put distilled water in them probably every 3 to 4 months. You got to put distilled water. If you don't, you ruin them. The ones that I got that are out there are 6-volt, and so I have a 24-volt system. And I'll go out there this afternoon and we'll go over that basic system so you can kind of like how it comes together. Okay, let's go forward here. So what's an inverter? An inverter is an electrical device that converts DC voltage to AC voltage. Well, DC power is common in small gadgets. Most household equipment uses AC power, so we need an efficient conversion from DC to AC. There are generally 3 to 4 sets of wires coming into or out of an inverter. There's the heavy-duty battery cables for both negative and positive. And we're talking about, when you go over there and see my old system, we got cables like that run from the battery to the inverter, and they're even bigger with my new system. Heavy cables, because you're running some serious amperage between the batteries and the inverters. And you've got you've got your power line coming from your solar panels, and those are 10 gauge wires, and that's bringing the DC power in to charge your system. You have the AC input in an inverter for charging the batteries when there's a lack of solar power, or you can hook your generator up. So either way, you have that AC power coming in. And then you have the AC power going out to the sub panel to be distributed throughout your whole electrical system. And again, I know when Karen looks at all these wires, she scratches her head and says, how do you do it? Again, it's about keeping the system separate in your mind. If you can't do that, then you might want to hire somebody that or get a friend in here that's savvy. This is not child's play, because you're dealing with some high voltage and high amperage, and so you can fry yourself pretty quick. This is not, my friend Jason back here is an electrician. And he could probably tell you some pretty scary stories because he's been an electrician all his life. It's not something to play with. You really got to know what you're doing with the stuff, because if you don't, you can get hurt really bad, or you can burn your house down. So I'm not trying to scare people, but it's kind of a disclaimer that you really want to know what you're doing before you tackle this stuff on your own. By God's grace, I've never had an accident so far. I hope I never do. I've seen a few sparks once in a while, but I try to be very, very cautious to make sure that things are grounded and things are turned off before I'm hooking wires up. I see Dan Brown smiling over there. Okay, next step here. So an inverter is a static device that converts one form of electrical power to another, DC, AC. It cannot generate electrical power. It is a converter, not a generator. In other words, you've got to put power into that, and it changes it from one form to another. Okay, does that make sense? Now let's talk about different types of inverters. And one of the things that I want to warn you of, salesmen will come to your place and they'll say, we can get you free electricity, or your electricity really cheap, and you sign on the dotted line, and we're going to put a bunch of solar panels up, and we're going to feed it into the electric company, and your bill's going to get reduced, and you're going to come ahead of the whole game. Don't do it. The reason being is when the grid goes down, you have no electricity, period. So if you're grid tied and grid dependent, in the state of Maine, the electric companies do not have to reimburse you for your electricity. All they do is give you electrical credits. I've checked it. So that, in my estimation as an Adventist Christian, is not a good way to go if you are trying to be self-sufficient. The next step is what they call a grid, off-grid. I'm kind of going backwards from my screen here. So we talked about grid tie, which is actually B. That's the one I have the real beef with. So what I have is an off-grid system. I don't tie into the grid whatsoever with it. And then the other system is what they call a hybrid, where you're tied into the grid, but you have your own battery system. If you have the money to afford that kind of an inverter, because there are different types of inverter, it's not a bad way to go. So you had the best of both worlds. You're online all the time, and you can get some solar credits, but you have your own battery system so that when the system collapses, you are still good to go. But it's a more expensive system. We're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars more, but it'll add, another, I don't know, a few $1,000s maybe for your inverter. I really haven't investigated, so I'm just coming off the top of my head on that one. But those are the three different systems. So you have off-grid, grid-tied, and the hybrid. Does this make sense? Yeah. Dan knows from experience. I wasn't going to point you out, Dan, but now that you've said it, and again, it's a learning experience. A friend of mine, I do a lot of business with him. He said he had he had a company come in, and they wanted to put a grid-tied system into his shop. He's got a big shop, and they were going to charge him $60,000. And I looked at him and said, "Boy, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. What happens to you when your power goes off?" And to me, that was, and knowing, and I didn't know as much as I know today. I just gotten into it. To me, that's a ripple. So anyway, for what it's worth. So let's go into the pure sine waves and everything. You've heard of pure sine waves, and you've probably heard of a modified sine wave inverter. So what it is DC power basically is, if you were to look at it on a graph or something, it's basically a straight line of power. It just goes and goes and goes. There's no alternating part of and it's just straight electrical power all the time. Where AC is that's why they call it alternating current. Now, make sure I push the right button here. Notice here on the top, this drops down like this and up and down like this. So when the generator is generating the power at the power stations, it's designed so that the power actually turns off and on momentarily. That's what you've heard the term 60 cycles per second. That 60 cycles per second means that that generator is turning at 60 cycle turn, so that the power goes off and on, off and off, just, and you can't see it. You look at those lights, those actually are flicking like this all the time. But your eye can't pick that up. So when you have 220 power, oh yeah, one other thing is the power is up here on the top of your curve, and it's down here on the bottom of your curve. And when you get to the middle, it's turned off. There's no power. So that's where the cycling happens. Is that goes up and down. It goes off and on, off and on, off and on. Now, when you have 220 power, you have two lines going, and one line is 180 degrees forward than the other line. So in my four inverters that we looked at a few minutes ago, the first two, the sine wave would be on the top. And when I went to install those inverters, I had to go into the third and fourth inverters, and I had to set the sine wave 180 degrees forward, so that they would be out of sync with one another, and that's what you call pure 220 electricity. So if you have a range, or you have hot water heater, that's a 220 hot water heater, anything that is 220 has to have that sort of a system going on. Does that make sense? Okay. I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're saying here. Okay. Now, you hear years ago, modified sine wave inverters were a big thing because they were cheap. And the reason they're cheap is they square off the sine wave. That is very hard on your equipment. So you do not, under any circumstances, unless you're going to run some lights out there when you're camping or whatever, but you do not want to run your equipment, especially your electronic equipment and your refrigerators and stoves, things with motors in them, stuff like that. You do not want to run them on a modified sine wave. That's junk electricity. Is that correct, my electricians? Junk electricity. Okay. Thank you. So there's more to inverters than just what I've explained. So you can buy inverters that are single 120, or you can buy them that they're 240. Now my inverters are single 120s, so I have to have at least two inverters that work together in order to give me my 240. The new Signature Solar 6000 units, they can go either way. They can be a 120 or they can be 240. Am I correct there, Blatantly? But is that correct? Because I've not used these systems. I've just read into it, and if I were to start all over again, I would have the new one. But they can go 120 or 240 in the inverter, right? Or are they just 120s? Yeah, the new ones. Yeah. Do you have to have two of them to get your 240, or do you have to get 240 off of one?
It's 240 off of the one inverter.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
thank you. Again, I've not bought them. It's the newest kid in town, and so if I were starting all over again, I've been in the process of setting up my new system now for 2 years, I think I bought everything, all my new equipment 2 years ago, and they did not have the 6000s then. You know, they came out with those maybe a year later after I started buying my equipment. And I stayed with it because it's still good equipment. Um, so another thing that's important, again, this is why if you're gonna do a bootstrap, you've got to make sure you buy the right equipment. So these 6,000, Signature Solar 6,000 watts, they are parallel or stackable. They use different names for it. So what that means is, you remember in the shop there, I had 4 of these going across the wall. I can put actually 2 more if I wanted to. My system can be built out to 6 of these units. The new ones that I'm recommending can be built out to, I think it's more. I think it's either 8 or 12. They can be built out. Stackables, yes, they can be built out. You have those new ones too, don't you? How many can you add to it? 8? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So these new ones are much more expandable than my system. Go ahead.
Something I learned here recently is that a lot of inverters won't talk to certain batteries due to whatever. I don't know if it's trademark or if it's just they were pushing a certain type of battery. So, like for instance, I'm looking at a solar converter be off grid and also do the grid tie at the same
So
time.
it's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid inverter,
Yeah.
but it will not communicate with certain batteries.
Wow.
So you need to think about if you're doing a bootstrap, you
Yep.
know, that down the road, where you want to be down the road, that it will communicate with that equipment.
Good.
Because if you're not communicating, that's the point.
I know on my units, uh, ideally, it likes the batteries that I manufacture, you know, so the inverter manufacturer, I have from the same manufacturer, I have their batteries. That's the ideal, but we could tie in their lead acid if I wanted to, or other types of lithium ion phosphate batteries. Mine will take other batteries. You can't, okay, so just so you know, you cannot cross battery types. So in other words, if you go with lead acid, you can't add to that unless you want to throw the lead acid out or stop using them, however you want to look at it. You can't have a hybrid of lead acid and lithium. You have to either have lithium or you have to have lead acid, but you can't have both in the same system. Your inverters communicate back and forth with your batteries so that your batteries are not being overcharged when you're using your system. Now, there's another very important thing here. Oh, go ahead.
What proximity does all of this equipment need to be to your electric box?
The closer, the better always. Like, for instance, even the solar panels, my panels behind my shop, I'm actually getting more voltage out of the same panels that I have here because the wire is so much closer to my inverter that I have when I have it at my shop. I know I was quite amazed by how quickly these panels, and in fact, I've got a bit of a problem. I'm actually making more electricity, and I've got to figure out a way to use it. I got a compressor out there. I got to turn off and on because my batteries are going to start to overcharge on it.
And then what do you do with the batteries when they've extended their life?
What do you do with them?
Mm.
Ask your local dump guy. I really don't know. Trade them in. Who? Sure, go ahead.
First, okay, so your first question is the distance. And so the distance, you want to make sure that all of your DC is close
Yeah.
to each other, because once you convert that from DC to AC, your AC can be anywhere in your facility. But just make sure all your DC is all close, at close range. But once you convert it to AC, it's no different than any of the power that we running.
Thank you. Um,
She was asking about batteries. What do you do with them at the end of life?
Yeah.
Lead acid batteries are easy to get rid of. They're worth something. You can get paid for them at your local recycle center. The lithium ions, I understand you have to mail them back, but or mail them to a place and take them, but they're not hard to get rid of.
I'm hoping that the Lord comes before my lithium battery burnout. Thank you. So this is very important, this next point here. The batteries must match up with the input voltage rating of the inverter. So what do I mean by that? The system that I have out there, my old system, is what we call a 24-volt system. That means it says 24 volts going into my inverter for it to convert the electricity, that's DC now. I got 24 volts of DC power going into the inverter to turn that into usable AC power. Follow me? My new system is a 48-volt system. So my batteries are 48 volt. Out there, I have 4 6-volt batteries that I wire in a series in order, that's correct, wire in a series to give me my 24-volt system. Following me? So that's extremely important. So if you buy an inverter, you want to choose your inverter first and then choose your batteries. Now, this is the warning. You're going to go home, you're going to go on Amazon, you're going to find all these batteries really cheaper than Signature Solar is selling them, and they're all lithium ion phosphate. You know what they're called? Now, you say, well, we can gang them together like Ashley did out here with his lead acid batteries. No, you can't. Do not put your lithium ion batteries in a series. You can parallel them, but not in a series. Now, beyond that, I can't explain a whole lot more. I just know that that's a no-no in the lithium ion phosphate world. Maybe somebody with a lot more information and knowledge can explain that to you. I just know that you can't do it. You can do that with lead acid, and it has something to do with the battery management and the recharging and everything. Other than that, I can't tell you. Like I said, I do not know everything about this business. But I know enough, and I've learned enough that there are certain things you do and you don't do. Everybody with me? So, right. So series is what I've got. Well, I've actually got both out there. So series is, let me do it on the blackboard here so it'll make some sense. And let me know when I'm running down on time, because I have no idea what time it is. So here is a battery. We're going to look at the top of the battery. So you've got a post here and a post here, and this is positive. This is positive, and this post is negative. Here's my next battery. And this is positive post and negative post. Positive, negative, positive, negative. So when I wire this together, this here, I will have a loop that goes up to my bus bar. This is a bus bar, and we'll explain what that is in a minute. And this will go from here, from my positive to my negative, positive to negative, positive to negative, and back up to a, and then there that goes. So this is what you call series. Now, parallel is have a complete system again, like this, and it's all the way across. But instead of tying this together with this, then you have the duplicate of this system here down below. I mean, I can draw this all out for you. And then this goes up to here like this, and then this last one would go to here like this, and that's what you call parallel. So we have 24 volts across here, 24 volts going across here, and they're tied in. So what it's doing is it's not changing my voltage, but I'm bringing up bus bars, which is, think of the bus bar as a rotary. All familiar with rotaries? And so the bus bar, what happens is all your power comes into your bus bars on my old system. Now, my new system is not quite that same way. It's harder to explain. I'll draw it out how the system works. But on my old system, you have bus bars, and from here you have charge controllers where electricity is coming in on that with a different line. You have electricity coming in from the solar panels. And that power then goes to the bus bars. And then the inverters tie into the bus bars, and so that it empowers them. So it's a system that kind of works together. When you see all the wires out there, some of you will be like, shake your head, walk away from it. If you study it and you can keep the wires separate in your mind, it will make perfect sense. What's that? Yeah, exactly. Can you see that, everybody? That's a good example. Yep. Yeah, that's parallel. Does that make sense? No? Oh, so he had two batteries. Go ahead.
Parallel.
Yeah.
Okay, the 1.5-volt battery. Okay, 2 of them or 3 of them, you'll still have 1.5 volts. And you can hook them up on the top of the ball. But my flashlight goes on 3 volts. So that's series. And here's the positive.
And he's connecting them together.
That's like those wires. If you have a flashlight, those flashlights used to go, and you put 2 batteries in, that would give you 3 volts.
That's a series. And what he was trying to show you, so when you put them together like that, you see that in flashlight batteries, then you got 1.5 volts, now you got 3 volts. Because you've put them together, they're compounds. But when you do a parallel thing, they're not series now, and all you have is 1.5 volts. You have to have them touching end to end. Exactly, you're doubling your amperage, okay? But your voltage is not doubled. Make sense? I know it's hard to grasp, but that's why I said, Karen comes in, looks at this stuff, and shakes her head, walks out. She said, I'm glad you know what you're doing. Exactly, there has to be, yeah. And so if it were a flashlight, we'll just do this real quick. Here's your bulb, there you go. And you'd have a switch here. That's basically what it would look like. Now, does that make more sense? Okay. What time do we got? I got half an hour? Okay. So the next step is to tie in your solar panels, wind, and generator input into your system. And again, you got to have certain cabling for certain applications. So when you're running your batteries, in fact, if you want, we can take a few minutes and take a look at what I've got out there, so that you can see exactly what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah. So this is what we would call Ashley's first attempt at a windmill that doesn't quite work right yet. One of the things I praise God for is I have a wife that is very patient and very encouraging. And when I fail or make mistakes or don't quite get it, she encourages me, not discourages me. She says, "Let's pray about it, honey, because we know you can do it by God's grace." And so I think this is a good time to share with you, there are a lot of cool things that I've done in my life, and I give God glory because I'm not a really smart guy. Didn't go to college. I did for one semester. And I have been able to do some pretty cool things in my business and in other aspects of life, and because God gives me wisdom, and I don't have. And so I don't ever hesitate after praying about a situation to dig into something I don't know anything. Now, that doesn't mean I don't research it. I do as much as I possibly can. I've seen God give me incredible wisdom that I would never have imagined I can do things in life. And even in my business, I had a client down in Massachusetts that wanted a wingback sectional um, built, and it was a corner piece. So it was a sectional that came together like this, and it was a wingback style. And I share this with you because it's very cool how the Lord worked here. And he contacted me with a concept, not a picture, because as far as I know, it's never been built. And he's probably got the only one that I'm aware of that's ever been built in this world. And I pondered this because I've built hundreds and hundreds of wingback chairs over my life, settees, and I just couldn't see how I could bring the two together. Now, most of the time when you build a sectional, you have one piece that fits into the back corner of another piece. In this case, I had to miter them together, and we have a compound angle. So if you look at a wingback chair, the back of it comes down like this and then down. Okay, you following me? And also they got wings on them. So you have a very thin rail there in order to attach the two pieces coming together. I had no idea, honestly, I had no idea. And the gentleman would email me every so often. He said, "Ashley, you've got this thing figured out yet?" I said, "Not really." One day, I was having my worship, and it was early in the morning, and out of the blue, I wasn't even thinking about this job. Out of the blue, it came to me to use what we call a bed rail frame uh, hardware. Now, what do I mean by that? It's a male-female type thing. So here it is. It's a slotted. We use this all the time when we make beds for clients. It's slotted. Here's the slot like that. There's two of them. And then on the male side, if you look at, so you're looking at the front view, but on the male side, you have this little thing that comes out that hooks like this, and it drops into the slots. Follow me? Brought that to my mind, how to connect the top part of that wingback. In a million years, I would have never thought of that. And so what I was able to do is build this mitered wingback frame and hook it together. You just pick up one side of the frame and drop it right into that thing, and it locked in perfectly. And I emailed him back that morning. It's like, I was amazed. It was such a simple little thing, and I've used it many, many times to build bed frames, okay? But it would never have crossed my mind to use it in this application. Emailed him back, and I normally don't go into some of this providential stuff, the Lord shows me, but I did that morning. I had no idea who this guy was. Come to find out, he was an executive of a large pharmaceutical company down in Massachusetts. I didn't know that about him at the time. And he was a Christian. And so I got an email back after explaining the story that I'm telling you. He said, "I'm a Christian too. You got the job." And I'm telling he was telling his wife about it, and they were thrilled that this was a providential thing. Since then, I've done a number of jobs for them. the point I'm trying to make is that God gives us wisdom. You know, when the tabernacle was built, what did the Lord do? He gave two men very special skill and wisdom. They probably didn't possess that, or if they did, they weren't as savvy as they became, okay? So this is my first attempt at a windmill. There's going to be a lot of changes, and I've learned an awful lot from it. I've learned how to build a hub system that I really didn't have any idea how I was gonna do it before. I really didn't. I went out in the shop one night. Karen was working late for Beans, LL and so, I just started tinkering, and I had a shaft collar that I knew I was going to use in this process. I had no idea how I could attach my arms to this thing and have them so they didn't break off easy. You just can't have just like a butt weld up against that. It's got to be more than that. And I prayed about it. I said, Lord, there's got to be some way I can make this whole thing work. And so I took a couple pieces of metal, put it together with this coupler, and all of a sudden, I just saw this in my mind. If I put this round ring underneath there, cut a metal ring and put it underneath there and weld that whole thing together with a couple gussets, that up. So the point I'm trying to make is we don't have to be geniuses because we don't have to be geniuses in order to do really cool things. The Lord will give us wisdom, not just in spiritual things, but in temporal things.
I just wanted to reply to your comment about you hadn't gone to college and whatever. I've known a lot of people who haven't gone to college and they're extremely intelligent. God gives us what we need.
That's right. So, I'm not sure what the question was, did I buy that signature solo? No, that's an Ashley Cunningham production, along with my helper, Billy. Uh, he works in the shop with me a few days every week, and the two of us. And Billy, actually, the Lord impressed Billy with something which I'd never thought about, and that is I have the top plate and the bottom plate of this thing. And as we were working on it at the shop, he said, "What's to keep this thing stable from not making it like this?" And he had just watched the video about stability of buildings and how they have to be reinforced and everything. I said, "You know, Billy, that has never crossed my mind. We can put a gusset at the top and gusset at the bottom of these rods, and that will, take care of the stability." And that's what we did. So I'm not the only one that receives these moments of inspiration. And so that's why I encourage people. If you were here last camp meeting, I was sharing with folks the vision that I had and where I was going with some of these things. Another cool project that I'm going to be talking with you on Friday morning is the solar. It's the storage heat unit out there. That's another cool project that the Lord has given me a lot of wisdom. We're not quite there with the whole thing yet, but I brought enough in order to show you the concept and how that's going to work, and it's a pretty neat concept. Again, the Lord gives us wisdom. So let's concentrate on questions on whatever questions you have on how to build a system. And this afternoon, we're just gonna kind of pick up with where we left off. We're gonna go out and we're gonna look at everything that's set up out there. You can ask all kinds of questions.
On the ground frame or on the roofs, especially in Maine
So you're from Maine.
right now, yes.
Yeah.
3 years.
So I have both. I started out, I got 12 panels up on the roof, and come January, they're buried quite a bit, and I have to go up and clean them off. So the answer to your question is if you have a really good, nice roof pitch, and you would need a pitch. Does everybody, can I erase all this? Okay. I don't need the whole thing here. I got to get a a better racer than this. Okay. If you have a roof pitch of about like this, they'll clean themselves off automatically. And that's what I have on my second set in the back of the shop. So it depends on your roof pitch. The roof pitch that I have on the shop is not enough. I mean, they'll eventually clear themselves, but my ones that I built the arrays for in the back clear themselves the same day for the most part. We'll have a big snowstorm. So that would be the best I can answer your question. It depends on the roof pitch. This is an ideal place because they're, up out of the way, and usually you have sunlight hitting those things. And of course, you want them in a southerly direction. As the sun comes up in the east and then circles up and around and sets to the west. So that's why it's always a good southern exposure. That answer your question?
In Florida, at least, and I'm sure that some of it might apply to Maine, 'cause our rain was a lot, and you guys have more solid rain. The decision whether to go on a roof or on a stand was largely based on, if you have a roof issue, you have to remove your solar panels.
Yeah.
So you have twice the maintenance, twice
Mhm.
the headache. And so if you have the land, people were recommending to not put it on your roof because then you can maintain your roof and your solar system separately.
I'm glad you brought that up. This is kind of a little off your point, but I want to show you how I have. So the ones that I have on my roof, this is how I've set them up. It's pretty cool because you don't have to put as much nuts and bolts in these things. Let me see how I can draw this out for you. Okay, I'll do it this way. So this is an end view. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Pete. That's a big help. Here's a solar panel, and you're looking at the end view of the solar panel. So let's just say this is the whole thing. You're looking at it from this view here, okay? Now, when it goes down on the metal, and by the way, what you see out there with the wood, so this is your roof line, and you get them 2 or 3 inches off your roof. So I should have done that. Let me do that. What you want to do is you want to make sure you're putting them on metal, never put them on wood. So this is purely for demonstration purposes only. I would never put them on wood because wood twists and cracks and all that kind of funny stuff. Metal is metal to metal. So we have a gap here. So on the first one, I bolt it down to my metal strap, and I bolt it down on my metal strap. So my first one, let's just say my first one is right here. Now on my second one, instead of bolting it down, what I did was when I put my second one on there, I put a metal plate on the bottom that extended out, and they slide into the first one that I put in there. So this metal plate, when this came together, this would slide underneath here, and the bolting down of this one, and it's not all the way across the panel. So it would be a strip of metal coming out here and a strip of metal coming out here. So it wouldn't interfere with my bolts, and you just slide them in, and then bolt it on the back side. And then when I put my third panel up, put a metal panel here, and you just stick it, just kind of lift it up a little bit, slides right under your last panel. So you're not having to bolt so many of these things down. That was cool. It added up for years. I had no issues with that.
Standing seam metal is slick because they just click onto the seam. There's no holes in a roof at all.
Say that again.
The grid clips onto the standing seam. It clips in so that there's no holes in your roof at all.
Okay.
And I just had them take the cables, take it down and put it on the rake through the fascia. So there's no holes in my roof at all, because I'm a little anal about holes in my roof.
Okay. Well, in my case, so if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you go into the electrical system, um, Jason will probably uses this stuff all the time. There's this channel stuff that you can buy. It's pretty heavy, and that's what I use to hold all my panels. And I think I have like 3 holes, sets of holes for air, across my roof. That I just put a little bit of hard silicone, and I build it up like that. I'm not really familiar with the system you're talking about, but if it works good and it's not that expensive. What's that? It is? Yeah. Okay, there's a lot better, ways of doing things than I know how to do, but this worked really good for me. Thanks, Peter, I appreciate that. Any other questions?
What's the lifespan of a solar
Yeah,
panel?
I hear you. Good question. I hear about 20 years. I know that over time they degrade and they start to lose their efficiency. Hopefully the Lord will be here long before that.
Yeah, and answer to that, they built solar panels in the 50s, and they degrade about 1% per year. So when they say it has a 20-year lifespan, that means 20 years from now, it'll produce 80% of its rated capacity in perfect conditions, and it keeps deteriorating. Now, I also had a neighbor that liked to shoot, and I ended up getting one right through one of the panels. And so the lifespan can vary, for sure.
So as far as I know, though, if you get one hole in it, it doesn't mean it shoots the whole thing, does it?
Just that series.
Right.
Drop. Yeah, anytime you have shade or you lose, you have a hole through your panel, whatever you have in that series, it all drops to that voltage on that panel, the lowest voltage. So I think I lost about 20% of my power off that panel. And actually, the whole 3 panels, because they were connected.
Wow. Go ahead.
So what we did is we bought a pallet of panels,
Yep, that's what we did.
and if we get hailed on or we get a stray bullet or something, I can replace that. So I've got a bunch of spare panels. So think about that when you're buying your panels.
Yeah. What? Go ahead.
Buying the pallet of panels makes a lot of sense because the panels are obsolete within about 3 or 4 years. And then you can't buy replacements of that voltage, and then you're stuck with having to replace the whole thing. So if you have extras, that makes a lot of sense, even though it's more upfront, because then you just stick ones in.
Yeah, that's the ideal. But one little correction. Most panels are the same voltage. In other words, when you buy a 48-volt panel, there's multiple companies that make a 48-volt panel. The thing that probably would be the biggest problem is the size. So the size varies, and that's where when you start to put it into an array, let's say, I'll tell you a sad story. So I was building my array, didn't have it all finished, and I had one up against, well, we built 2 arrays, if you remember my picture there. And in that process, we were trying to work through some problems with the arrays and everything. And we had a storm came up one Saturday evening, and it was a really bad windstorm. I went out Sunday morning, and 2 of my panels had been completely smashed right through my on my staging. I just sat there and tears down my cheek. I just wished I had tied them off better, and I had tied them off, but not as well as I should have. And it was in the process of building and working the problems out. And so Al and Fatima came by that morning. We unloaded the rest of the panels, and he so graciously, he needed some panels, and so what did is we went together on another bunch of panels, and I had to put 6 different type of panels on my second array, and the 4 panels that were left are actually up because I was out 2 panels, and the second the second size, they were the right voltage and everything, but they didn't fit together with my 4 that I have out there. The size was different. And that was a sad moment because that was $500 for the panels, sitting behind my shop.
In the instance that I would describe to you with the bullet through my panel, I didn't buy the extra panels, but in talking with an electrician that worked with solar, he said, you just need to make sure, number one, it's the same voltage panel. Number two, that there's, I don't remember the percentage, but it had to be some percentage of the open current voltage of the panel, the IMP, which is all on the back of the panel. So I actually put a monocrystalline replacement panel in there, which was a little bit smaller than the polycrystalline panel that I used. And I actually got full power back again. So you do not have to, you don't have to throw all your panels out or whatever. You can actually replace. You just got to look specifically for those. Somebody better than me. You can do it.
Yep.
Is the point.
And we'll get into this afternoon. We'll get into some of the stuff he's talking about there as far as the different types of panels. These panels out here, we need to because they collect electricity on both sides, and we'll go into the science on how that works. Any other questions? What time is it? 5 minutes? Thank you so much. Any other question? Go ahead. Yes, yes. That's a good question. I was going to bring that up. Thank you. So, okay, the question was, can you generate electricity on a cloudy day? And the question is yes. You just don't generate as much. So let's just say a day where we have really, really blue sky, open sun, you're generating at 100%. On a cloudy day, depending on how cloudy it is, and you can even generate on a rainy day. That's how far down you can go. You can generate electricity right up until the sun sets. But as the cloud cover comes in, the percentage drops and drops and drops. So to give you kind of an idea, because I've watched this just out of my own curiosity, on a day like today, you probably get 60, 70, 80% of what you do on a really good day. Because you notice it's kind of hazy out there. So you're not going to get 100% out of the hazy day today, but you're going to get way up there. But if let's just say you come in with a rainy day, you'll get somewhere, depending on how dark it is, you'll get somewhere between 20, 25, maybe if it's a little on the lighter side that day, you might get 30%. That helpful? And then as the sun starts to set, you'll see the wattage drops and drops and drops and drops and drops until this time. And it has to be almost pitch black out there where there's nothing there.
I just wanted to, as we're talking about this, I wanted to bring up the point that when you're sizing your solar system, you need to size it for the shortest season, the worst season of the year, which is usually December, when you have the most cloud cover and the least amount of daylight. Because I had a 5,000 watt system, and in the summertime I could have 30,000 watts or 30 kW. And in the wintertime, on a really good day, I might have 10 kW. So yeah, you want to size for your worst months. That way, yeah, you have excess power, but at least you have enough.
And going along with that, you size it to according to how much money you wallet.
Ashley, what is there an ideal angle that these things have to be?
Yeah. So in the summertime, you want more, and I don't have the exact angle because it varies where you are. Before I came up here, I went online and the pitch up here was, I don't remember now what it was.
46.
46? Thank you.
46.
Okay. This time of year. No, it was
That's-
50
that's-
something.
it's-
It was
it's
52.
Is it 52 for your?
That's what the calculator said. It was
I'm further
52.
north, so.
And then in the wintertime, it's a lot steeper. And I don't know what that is, but, and some guys just kind of like do this sort of thing and do this sort of thing, okay? But there's online calculators where you can get that. It's important. The most important thing is in the wintertime, having it so it's steep enough to catch that sun and steep enough so that the snow is going to come off of it. You're not out there with a brush. Okay?
I like that. That's actually, it's funny you should say that because, Ashley and I, we do some fun stuff together sometimes.
And Fred is the one who put me on the signature solar. I'll give him the credit for that.
And so I'm going to address one thing you had said is you definitely want to make sure that you're calculating your shortest season, but you want to also calculate the amount of days that you want to make the power. And so we have for the winter for our particular area, we're pretty much off grid, and so no, we are off grid. We have nothing coming in. So our shortest season, or when we audit our electricity usage, we use about, and some of the GMI guys will probably pass out when I say this, but we use about 10 to almost 15 kilowatts a day. And the reason we use 10 to 15 kilowatts a day is because I wanted to make sure that the that we could run certain appliances, the hot water heater, the pump. As you can see, I do a lot with electronics, and so, but those things I don't really need. But for an average home, you could probably get away with 10 kilowatts over a good couple of days. But I just have a lot of stuff that I have to maintain, especially when it comes to work. But you just want to make sure that when you're auditing your usage, take that number and multiply it by the number of days you want to maintain autonomy from the system. And so he has, I think you have two banks. You have two banks,
Solar arrays?
not two solar banks, two battery banks.
No, I only have one. I have 30K.
You have 30K.
Yeah,
and
I have the
so
one.
you'll be upset if you would came over because we're actually running 60K in ours. And that helps us to maintain during the winter
Yeah.
since we're off grid. That's key. If you're off grid and you're trying to make sure that you have 3, 4, 5 days through the week, and you've got that sun that's not producing for you, or like you going back to your snow thing there, we have we have to take the snow off the panels, but we have one of the panels, one of the arrays is at 46 degrees, but the one that is set for winter for our particular area, it's set at 66 degrees. And so the 46 degrees, we're just scraping off, but the 66 degrees, I'm touching the bottom of the panel array, and that still goes. And so that's key: is know your different your angles for your particular area. Thanks.
So again, it has a lot to do with your budget. I would like to have another battery bank. That's $7,200. Now it's come down $2,000 since I first bought my first bank. But $7,200 is a chunk of change still. There's so many hands, and we really need to close for lunch. We're going to come right back, and we're going to pick it up right where we left off. But go ahead, Mark.
I'm completely off grid. You talked about augmenting solar. I augment my solar with generator.
Yep.
Propane. The house stove runs on propane. I have the option to run my refrigerator on propane. So that helps when you look at the consumption issue on the backside of all of that. Soft start pumps for deep well, all of those things start to play into it. LED lights, all of that stuff. So augmentation, wind at night when there's no sun, So those are things we can do to add to the power source.
So the thing you got to keep in mind though, when you substitute, which is what you're basically saying, what happens when we can't buy or sell? You've got to have a plan in place, okay? And that's something to keep in mind because, yeah, ultimately, yeah, you can buy a gas refrigerator and a gas stove and a gas furnace and a gas this and a gas this. What happens when you can't buy gas? It's like you can't buy electricity. You got to think all these things through. Um, that's a good way of looking at it, but you just got to look at the future too. So it's time. It's probably time to quit, right? We're past time. Oh, what's that? 12:33. So let's have closing prayer, and we're going to pick it right up. So you got questions when you come back, and then we're going to go out there and we're going to look and ask questions and answer questions, and the best I know how to do. Okay, let's close with prayer. Father in heaven, again we know that you are the great creator God, and it is your sun and your wind and your elements of the earth that we put together our inventions, and ultimately it's your wisdom that gives us that grace to build those things. So Father, thank you for making life easier for us by teaching us how to use your natural blessings that you have given us. Now, as we close this meeting out, we want to give you all the glory and honor and praise for all that you do for us. Grace you give us. In Jesus' name, amen.